Justice Alito?
Could you explain how your rule would be carried out by police officers on a day-to-day basis? Let's say that there are 500 beds in a particular town, and let's say it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a winter day. What is an individual police officer supposed to do? The individual police officer would go around and count the number of people who are getting ready to sleep outside. I guess if it's 4 o'clock, you wouldn't get that. Let's say it's 6 o'clock. Count the number of people who are getting ready to sleep outside for the night, and then ask each one of them whether you've tried to find a bed at a shelter, whether that person would be willing to go to a shelter if a bed is available, without any conditions, or whether the bed would have to be available on the conditions that the individual wants, like I won't go to a shelter where they won't take my dog or something like that. And just explain how it would work on a daily basis. Well,
first of all, with respect to the individual encounter, I think the way this would work in the real world, I think it's important to understand what happens on the ground in these situations. I think in the circumstances you're talking about, I think what would happen is that the person encountering the homeless person would know whether there is a spot available. I don't think the homeless person would be required to check each day with each shelter if there are multiple shelters. And in larger cities, these initial encounters are not handled by law enforcement. They're typically handled by social services agencies who are in contact with people who are camping and know what their circumstances are, and they are able to say, we know that at such and such shelter there are beds available. Would you be willing to go?
What if there's a question about whether there are indeed enough shelter beds available? Your rule wouldn't apply if there are enough beds available, right? If there are 500 shelter beds and there are only 200 people who are trying to sleep outside, then your rule wouldn't apply.
Right.
So you have to have a comparison of the number of beds available with the number of people who want to sleep outside.
Right, yes.
So that would be the threshold question.
Right. I just want to clarify one point about that. It's not simply a measure of the number of beds against the number of homeless people, such that if there is a deficit, the city can't enforce the law at all. If you have individualized questioning and you know that there are vacancies available, even if not for everybody, but there is a vacancy for the person being interviewed, then yes, that person, if that person is offered and refuses, that person could be prosecuted. Or cited. So
what if the person says, I know there's a bed available at the Gospel Rescue Mission, but they won't take my dog?
Yeah, I don't think the inability to take your dog to the shelter is a sufficient reason. There are shelters in some larger cities that may well take pets. But
I know I could sleep in the home of a family member, but they really hate me and they're really nasty to me. I'm not. These are. I'm just wondering how this is going to be administered on a daily basis.
And I think, with all respect, I think that example is if the family is going to accept them, but that's the question, whether there is a place to sleep. And I don't know that it would very often come down to that family hates me. On the other hand, if it's a woman who left domestic abuse, she couldn't be expected to go back to her home, or maybe her relative's home, or his relative's home, or something. So there's a lot of common sense. And again, the first encounter that a police officer or somebody else has with a homeless person is very unlikely to be a situation in which the person would be issued a citation.
You mentioned just a couple of things that I wanted to follow up on. Does it matter whether the person grew up in the town or not? Suppose that they go to okay, that's irrelevant. So if they go up to some police officer or social services in San Diego goes up to somebody and says, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Fargo, but if I have to sleep outside, I sure would rather do it here than in Fargo. That doesn't matter.
No, and I think not because of any Eighth Amendment rule we're talking about, but under this court's decisions in Edwards and Signs, the Privileges and Immunities Clause or the Commerce Clause or the various right to travel provisions would prohibit attaching that sort of limitation to a newcomer. But I would, as I mentioned,
okay,
the majority of people are
where I used to live in New Jersey, there are a lot of really small municipalities. I think over 500 municipalities in the state. I could go for a 20-minute walk in the evening and be in 3 or 4 different municipalities. So to get back to the Chief Justice's question, if there aren't enough beds available in West Caldwell, does it matter? Is it West Caldwell's out of luck, even though there are a lot of beds available in Caldwell, which is, a couple less than a mile away?
Yeah, I think the way you're describing it, it might be fair to say that set of small and closely knit communities would be one community, and the person wouldn't basically be banished from where he lived or where he grew up by saying, if there's a shelter in this other location, then you could be expected to go there.
There's some tiny municipalities. What if a municipality doesn't have a park? So if somebody is going to sleep outside, the only place where that person can sleep is going to have to be on the street.
Why?
What does a time, place, or manner restriction work there?
I mean, certainly not on the street, and because of safety, traffic, et cetera. I mean, there are common sense accommodations, and I think even in the smallest town, there are probably locations where a person could sleep.
All right, thank you.